Hey guys, so we are back at it again, and on Monday we had our first lesson of quarter three, where we looked at Nye's poem "Burning the Old Year." So since quarter three is a very writing-heavy quarter, I want to kind of get back at refreshing some things and improving some skills that a lot of us need to continue to work on based on the outcome of the informative essay. So, what I'm going to go over today is what I call 6 logical steps. And these 6 logical steps are a pattern to recognize and utilize as you write paragraphs. And if you can recognize and utilize each of these 6 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you commit that process to memory, you will have a successful paragraph almost every single time. And successful paragraphs lead to successful essays. Now, the pattern for some people who are super advanced writers, and there are a few of you in the class, may already be clear, even though you wouldn't put those descriptors on them. And for some of you, it might seem repetitive, but remember that once you commit the pattern to memory and you know what to do, then you can work on elevating further. And as you mature and grow as a writer, you will have more freedom to experiment. But for right now, let's think about a logical writing pattern. Okay, we are pattern programmed as human beings. We like patterns, we look for them, we respond to them. So it makes sense that we want to use logical patterns in our writing. Therefore, readers will respond positively to those patterns. So if we take the first logical idea, and that is, if an essay has a clear thesis statement, its supporting details will be easy to see, and readers will know what you plan to write about, and they will expect to hear about each of those supporting details in the order that you give them in a thesis statement. This is part of a good logical organizational plan, and all of us should grasp that at this point. A great example of a clear thesis statement with a logical organizational plan is the Telltale Heart model thesis statement that we used in the fall. Okay, so in the Telltale Heart, the narrator's tone changes drastically from calm and rational to aggressive to mentally deranged as the story progresses. So that parlays into logical idea B. Okay. Each body paragraph in an essay stems from one of those supporting ideas. So I got to get rid of myself over here. I'm just going to get rid of myself. Okay. So the logical idea is that I say, hey, from my thesis statement, you can tell that I'm going to have a whole body paragraph about being calm and rational, the tone being calm and rational. From my thesis statement, you can tell that I am going to write an entire paragraph about the tone shifting to aggression. From this very clearly written thesis statement, you can tell that I am going to shift in the last body paragraph to discussing how the tone ultimately becomes mentally deranged. Clear thesis statement sets up a clear pattern. You follow through on that pattern by utilizing the supporting ideas in the order that they were given. And there are still a couple people on our team who are not writing about the supporting ideas in the order they were given in the thesis statement. That absolutely has to happen. So if body paragraphs stem from supporting ideas in the thesis statement, then it makes sense that each body paragraph sort of acts like a mini essay. So if you're containing your body paragraph ideas to the one thing from the thesis statement, and that one supporting idea becomes the focus of an entire paragraph, then that paragraph almost becomes like a miniature essay. And if a paragraph is like a miniature essay, then the topic sentence is serving the same purpose as a thesis statement. So when we write paragraphs, we want to think about the topic sentence acting like a little thesis statement. And then the last logical idea is that if well-organized, successful essays follow an overall organizational plan, then paragraphs should also have an organizational plan that can guarantee success. So let's talk about the plan that leads to guaranteed success. Okay. All logically organized academic essays use these 6 steps. And if you look at essays written for school critically and you take them apart and you look at their parts and pieces, you can see this pattern being repeated in almost every single paragraph. So you'll start with step 1, the topic sentence, then context, then speaker tag, then text evidence, then citation, and then finally elaboration. Topic sentence, most of us have that down, but I'd say about 40%, 35 to 40% of the team still needs to continue to work on transitioning with a full subordinating clause between paragraph, at the beginning of paragraph, body paragraph 2, and at the beginning of body paragraph 3. Speaker tags are missing for some of us, which is why we're talking specifically about these 6 logical steps today. So I want you to notice context for everybody, and I want you to notice speaker tag for everybody. Text evidence, we've had some practice over the last year and a half, 2 years with text evidence, and most people are pretty good at giving text evidence, but some of us still need to work on citing it properly. And then, of course, the most challenging thing for any writer at almost any age is meaningful elaboration. So these are our 6 steps. And if you think about something in terms of a pattern, you're almost always going to see this pattern in a well-written, successful academic essay. So let's go back to the poem from Monday, and let's play with a prompt to work through what these 6 logical steps might look like. So let's pretend that this is our prompt. How does Nye use literary devices to communicate a theme of new beginnings in Burning the Old Year? So the prompt asks you about literary devices like personification, simile, metaphor, onomatopoeia, those types of things, imagery. Okay, so the prompt asks about how she uses literary devices to create a theme of new beginnings. So you're being asked to address this particular theme. Is it the only theme in the poem? No, but it is one of them. So that is the prompt. Okay, so everything that you'll see from here on out answers this prompt. So we go to step 1. Step 1 is to draft the topic sentence. And when we write a full essay, we would write a thesis statement and then the topic sentences, and then go in and complete an essay organizer. If you have a short answer question where you can get away with only writing 1 paragraph, then the first step is going to be the topic sentence. And this topic sentence is going to work like a thesis statement, and it will control the direction of the entire paragraph. So to answer this prompt in red, I might draft a topic sentence that looks like this. While Nye's poem is full of literary devices, her use of metaphor really works to make the theme of new beginnings clear. Notice that it's an elevated topic sentence, okay? And so we want to continue to work on elevating while we are getting used to applying these 6 steps. So first is my topic sentence, and it might look something like this. While Nye's poem is full of literary devices, her use of metaphor really works to make the theme of new beginnings clear. Now the reader knows that this paragraph is going to hone in and closely look at metaphor. Then I'm going to go to step number 2. Step number 2 is context. And I'd say about 85% of our team still needs to work on context. And that's fine because it's a challenging thing to master, especially for young writers. So context is what needs to happen before you give a speaker tag and before you give text evidence. A lot of people in their Telltale Heart essays were just dropping text evidence into a paragraph with no real type of lead-in. Okay, speaker tag is not enough of a lead-in. You have to have context. And think of context as an extension of the lead-in. Okay, you need to tell the reader what's happening in the text you are about to use, or what's the main idea of the text. So an example of context that answers this prompt might look like this. Nye's poem centers on the idea that a lot of what happens in the world each year is not important. The stuff that is not important can be burned, but the important stuff, the things that really matter, can never be burned. Nye communicates this idea through the metaphor of paper and stone. So there's context. I'm telling you a little bit about what this poem is about. What is the main idea of this poem? So it's going to be topic sentence, then context. Okay, notice that here I've written 3 sentences. So context is something that takes time and thoughtfulness, like all good writing. That's step 2. Step 3 is simple. After context, I'm going to give a speaker tag. And that is where I make it clear who is the source of the quote. Is it a character or the writer? So after context, I might have a lead in, a shorter lead in that looks like this. As Nye develops her metaphor, she writes. Okay, so now I know who's saying what. Where is this text evidence that I'm about to give right here? Where is that coming from? Now, other basic examples of speaker tags might be things like this. The narrator explains, Poe writes, Ringo believes, Russell makes her theory clear when she suggests. Speaker tags can be very simple, like Poe writes and Ringo believes, but you can also elevate them, which is a stronger strategy, by giving more detail in the speaker tag. So as Nye develops her metaphor, she writes, is an elevated speaker tag. Russell makes her theory clear when she suggests, is an elevated speaker tag. So after I give the speaker tag, this is the part that a lot of us are really good at, and that is providing the text evidence. So from the text, I pick meaningful evidence, not any evidence, evidence that really helps me make my point. So here we see the speaker tag I just gave you. As Nye develops her metaphor, she writes, and then I add in my text evidence, which is going to come from an essay organizer if I'm writing an entire essay. If I'm just responding to a short answer question in a test situation, or for a list of questions I might be answering about a story or poem, then I'm going to need to just go ahead and use my annotation notes to find meaningful text evidence. And that's where taking good annotation notes as we study a text is important. So once I've given text evidence, if needed, I'm going to give a citation. So in the speaker tag that I just gave you, I mentioned the author's name. As Nye develops her metaphor, she writes. And then I put in my text evidence. Now, there's no page number on this poetry sheet. So since I've given the author's name here, I do not need to use anything in parentheses. There will be other circumstances where you will need to do that. So let's say I use a speaker tag like this. The author makes this clear when she writes, comma, and then I use my text evidence, I love you more than life itself. Well, you see that I wrote the author. I didn't give the author's name. So in this case, in parentheses, I'm going to have to use the author's name, and if it's available, a page number, close parentheses, and a period. If I have a page number, but I mention the author's name in the speaker tag, then I'm going to give a citation that looks something like this. Plath makes her devotion clear when she yells, I love you more than life itself. So I gave the author's name in the speaker tag. Now, if I have a page number, I'm going to just use the page number here. I'm not going to double up and do this after I've already said the author's name in the speaker tag, okay? So take a look at how this is set up, here I mention the author's name in the speaker tag. There's no page number, so close parentheses, and I'm done. Here, I mention the author, but not by name. So in the parenthetical citation, it's going to be author's last name and page number if I have it. If I have a page number and I mention the author's name in the speaker tag, then I only give the page number in parentheses. So that's step 5. Step 6 is the hardest part for most people. So 6 is elaboration. Now, elaboration takes the most time and the most thought. It shows how well you understand something. It shows how well developed you are as a writer at this point. It is the main thing after the thesis statement that most teachers will look at and study to evaluate your writing. So we want to think about giving mean. What does the text evidence mean? And why does it matter? Elaboration. So why is that elaboration important? So I finish with my text evidence, going back to burning the old year. So as Nye develops her metaphor, she writes, so much of any year is flammable. Lists of vegetables, partial poems. Orange swirling flames of days, so little is a stone. Now here comes the elaboration. When Nye speaks of lists and poems, she refers to things on paper. Okay, what does it mean? I've just interpreted what that text evidence means. Now, why does it matter? While people are in the moment, they get so caught up in their to-do lists that they forget what is really important and go rushing off to the next appointment, which is a common reaction for most people. That part right there that's italicized, okay, that's why it matters. Right here, saying that it's a common reaction for most people, that's making the connection to the reader. Nye suggests those lists are unimportant in the long run and can burn away and be forgotten. What she thinks really matters is things made of stone. Okay, so what does it mean? Now I'm going to continue to explain, what does this mean? What does this text mean? What does so little is a stone mean? Stone things are permanent and cannot be burned, like love, family, and education. Therefore, the metaphor of paper compared to being temporary things and stone being compared to permanent things helps the reader appreciate Nye's message about beginning fresh each year by burning away the silly things like arguments with friends or a lost baseball game and focusing on the stone things that make life wonderful. And if you notice here, okay, I've explained what it means and included why it matters, and then continued to explain what it means and why it matters. This is a lot of elaboration, but I need to assume that my reader wants to learn and doesn't know much about the poem. So I'm going to interpret it and also show them how it applies to their life in my elaboration. That's step 6. Okay. When I put it all together, steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, my paragraph is going to look something like this. Smart people are going to pause right here and read this paragraph before moving on. Now, if you notice, the model only showed one piece of text evidence being used. So what happens if you need 2 or more pieces of text evidence, which is a requirement for a full essay? So now what? The logical pattern still applies. So it's still a 6-step pattern. So if I start a paragraph with a topic sentence, context, speaker tag, text evidence, citation, elaboration, then if I need more text evidence, I'm going to go back to number 1. So I'm going to circle back to number 1 with a transitional sentence. Then give context, speaker tag, text evidence, citation, and finally elaboration to conclude the paragraph as a fully written standalone paragraph. Okay, so when you need more than one piece of text evidence, the pattern continues. The only difference is that your number one becomes a transitional sentence. So what would a transitional sentence maybe look like to answer the prompt about burning the old year? So when I use that first piece of text evidence, so little as a stone, I've given my elaboration. Now I want to continue. So a transitional sentence might look something like this. Though it takes the reader a while to grasp Nye's extended metaphor, she begins introducing it to the reader from the first line. And then that's my transitional sentence. Then I'll continue and I'll give some context for the text evidence that I'm about to use. Speaker tag, give the text evidence, cite it, and elaborate. That is the 6 logical steps toward writing a successful paragraph for school each and every time. When I put it all together, now I've got what you were asked to read a few moments ago, and I've added on my transitional sentence, and then I will continue following that pattern. If I were you and I wanted to be successful on Thursday, I would pause here and I would read through this one more time, and I would think for a minute about how I might continue writing this paragraph independently if I were asked to do so. You will be asked to apply this logical organization pattern in class while I watch you write and give you pointers tomorrow. And then we will practice with this throughout the rest of the year whenever we are writing. So this 6-step pattern is now going to become an expectation. We'll practice with it. And as we practice with it, if we are dedicated to committing it to memory, elevating it, and taking the time that it needs to do it well, then your writing is going to be much improved and fully ready for high school by the time we get to May.